Secretly recorded from deep inside the bowels of a decommissioned missile silo, we bring you the man, one single man who wants to bring light to the darkness and dark to the lightness. Although he's not always right, he is always certain. So now, with security protocols in place, the protesters have been forced back behind the barricades and the blast doors are now sealed. Without further delay, let me introduce you to the host of Hutcast, Mr. Tim Hutner.
Thank you, Sergeant-at-Arms. You can now take your post. Welcome to Hutcast 3/9/2022, and we are blessed to have Senator Paul Gazelka, and he is?
I'm from Brainerd area up north.
And you are?
I was the former Senate Majority Leader and now candidate for governor in Minnesota.
Candidate for governor. How is that awesome? So Hutcast is going to interview him and get his take on things in life, and we're going to be back in just a moment. So stand by for Senator Paul Gazelka. Buying a gun is no ordinary purchase. Whether you're a hunter, competitive shooter, or self-defense is your priority, there are many kinds of guns and many kinds of training programs. You use your brain all the time. You will rarely need to use your gun. Before you find yourself in a situation where you need to make a critical decision, make sure your training is the best you can get. It could be the difference between life and death, or freedom or detention. For the best quality training, check out permittocarry.us. If you live in Minnesota or Wisconsin or even Florida, give Gene German a call, 612-388-2403. That's Permit to Carry US. Or call Gene German at 612-388-2403. Welcome back to Hutcast. As I said in pre-roll, we have a special guest in studio today. He is a governor candidate for the state of Minnesota. We have a lot of high hopes here, and I hope you get his message across. Paul Gazelka is in our studio. Paul, welcome to the show.
It's good to be on the show. Your reputation precedes you, and I'm really glad I get to be a part of this.
Well, thanks for coming in. Where do we start this? My buddies come in and they say, "Hey, Tim Hutner's going to do another show, but we got like royalty here tonight." So how do we start this? Because we all know your agenda. We love your agenda. I want to do something that isn't Tommy Bernardish. I want something that people can hear you, feel you. Where do you want to start tonight's show?
We were talking ahead of time, and I was just reflecting on the fact that I was the leader of the Senate the last 5 years, and really felt the privilege of being in that leadership role and actually being able to help people. I think about that and, just the things you do in life and what's significant and what's not. And as I reflect back, I'm 62, and that's probably been some of the most significant things I've had the privilege of doing is helping people around the state.
And we all thank you for that. I know it's a daunting job. A lot of people don't agree. They don't want that. They just don't see because they don't understand how involved you guys are.
Yeah, and I'm a conservative, but in Minnesota, for a long time, we were the only divided legislature in the whole country. And yet we had to figure out how to pass a budget. And that comes from respecting the other side and valuing them while you're fighting for your differences. And so we're able to do that. I never talk over people. I talk to them. And I think in the end, you get better results if you do it that way.
Certainly a good outlook. The Brainerd area, how big is your area as far as density, population?
It's right in the center of the state. And if you combine Brainerd and Baxter, they're a little over 20,000. But in the summertime, that Crow Wing County and Cass County, they encompass that area. It's probably 250,000. I mean, it's all the lakes up there. Everybody comes up there, and it's a zoo, but it's a zoo that I enjoy.
And I suppose during the racetrack time, it even doubles that.
Yeah, BIR, Brainerd International Raceway, I think they have as many as 100,000 fans at some of their biggest events. And yeah, like I said, it's crazy in the summer, but it's also a lot of activity and a lot of people having fun. They come up there to have fun, and so people are typically positive when they're up there, and that just makes life a lot of fun.
It's incredible the amount of space that's up there, and it's so beautiful.
we have the Brainerd International Raceway. We've got fantastic resorts. There's more than 1,000 holes of golf. And then, oh, by the way, there's a bunch of lakes that people like.
Yeah. We like to call them 10,000 lakes, not 10,000 taxes, right?
The 10,000 taxes is my goal as leader and then future governor. We're in the top 5 tax states in the United States. How about we get out of the top 10? And the number one issue that I'm going to get rid of first is the tax on Social Security income. I don't mind if seniors leave because it's too darn cold, but if it's our taxes, let's stop that.
Come for the lakes, leave for the taxes.
Yep.
You got to wonder. I again, as public servants, it's very difficult for people to understand your guys' schedule. I mean, we're recording here it's almost 7 at night, so we can get this done. And again, I appreciate you coming to Hutcast. But for the record, again, if you win, I'm in the house with you. We're going to do this.
I'm confirming it here right now.
We'll do an episode, or maybe I can just use the governor's jacuzzi after we clean it out after Waltz is gone. I don't know.
I've been in there a few times. I've never seen a jacuzzi, but it could be somewhere I haven't seen.
Okay, now people who study you, we understand your ideas, and personally, I'm all for that. Let's go back to like the beginning of last year during this mask thing, and I don't want to turn this into a Walt Hayton thing because he has his ideas, we have ours. If you were in position at that time, what gear would you shift, and how would you do it?
Well, I would have done it a lot different, and we weren't talking a lot at that point, or up to that point. I will say at the very beginning of COVID, nobody knew for sure. I mean, it seemed like the data was pointing to if you're over 70, it's a problem. But certainly a month into it, you began to see the data and you could read it. And so when he said on a Zoom that I was on that he was going to shelter in place everyone, I said, Governor, that's a huge mistake because it was really primarily only people over 70. But I said, what about the economy? What about our kids' education? This is more than just the virus. There's many other things that are going to be impacted, mental health, drug addiction, etc. And that was the beginning of our divide. The first 30 days, I wanted to help every way I could to provide resources for the masks and the ventilators and all the things that we thought we were going to need a lot of. But as we kept going down the road and he kept hanging on to emergency powers and then really being more like a king, just saying this is how it's going to be.
There, you said the magic word.
Yeah. And that it was incredibly frustrating, and we couldn't end emergency powers in Minnesota unless the House also agreed. And because they were controlled by Democrats, they had a conflict. Do you stay with your same party governor, or do you go against him? It finally, in the very end, at the end of the 2-year budget, they finally agreed to end emergency powers against his wishes. But a lot of damage had been done. And now we know Johns Hopkins University said that lockdowns didn't do anything. And so I was right in the beginning. And same thing with the riots that I think may be you might be able to attribute to them, to people being locked down and so frustrated. But again, he did not bring out the National Guard in any timely fashion and allowed it to get out of control. And the third precinct burned down. That was the first one since the 1800s. After 5 days, I actually called the White House and said, you guys are going to have to act because there was no action. And
we're going to get to that.
All right. I mean, you opened it up, buddy. I went right in there.
I'm going to steer you towards the third precinct because I had friends down there.
Yeah.
But what Waltz did, and I get what he did, and it's a very difficult moving target for him. Now, that target, he didn't know. And I'm not defending him in any position because really nobody knew. Yep. We were taking guidance by the CDC, and they're saying this, they're saying that, but we're being led by a guy who just couldn't lead.
Yeah, and I would say that he joined what California did and New York and some of the other Democrat governors. I would have aligned more with what Republican governors did. And the biggest thing I think I would say is they trusted the people more to make the right decisions. And, in the end, Wisconsin, right next to Minnesota, their courts wouldn't let their governor shut everything down and wouldn't let them force masks on people. Well, now we see the data comparing the two states, which are basically the same population, same mix of urban and suburban
Okay.
and metro, and yet the death rates from the virus and the hospitalization rates were virtually the same. But the difference was in Minnesota, we closed the schools, we kept kids out, we forced them to wear masks, we shut down business, and by we, I say Tim Walz, and that's the difference, and that's why so many people are angry at him, and I think that's why I'm going to be governor.
I believe that's a very good statement. But again, it's a moving target for him. And we like you said, we wanted to trust our officials and the higher ups, but here we are. And you know what? Trust only goes so far. Faith goes just as much, and common sense should go a little further.
And trusting the people. I think that's the difference is I trust the people more than I trust government to tell us what to do. The individual knows what's best for himself and his family. They may make mistakes, that we all do, but then they will adapt to those. And that's the difference. I mean, look at South Dakota and Kristi Noem. He said, I'm going to trust the people, and they're much happier. I mean, that was the point. The difference between the House and the Senate, under the Senate that I controlled, there was no mask mandate. There was no vaccine mandate. In the House and everywhere else, there was. In the House under Democrats, they went walking through the hallways, making sure that people were wearing their mask and giving them an ethics violation if they didn't. In the Senate, I trusted the people, and we were happy and communicating, and the results were the same as far as the virus. But as far as mental health, we were much better off.
You said the magic words of they were going through and chastising people who weren't wearing the masks.
Yeah, I mean, that was, again, a difference. I told people in the Senate, you have to follow your own judgment. It's not going to be mandatory here. The CDC says it's a good idea, and most people wore a mask, but they chose to wear the mask. And that was the difference. And in our society, that's where people were very, very frustrated. And, it turns out, the mask didn't stop a lot, didn't seem to make a whole lot of a difference unless you had an N95. The vaccine is the one that we'll all be discussing, and we'll look back and see that
for decades.
Yeah. How much, what were the consequences of taking the virus? I mean, the vaccine, as far as bad effects, I haven't really seen much on that.
Well, we won't.
Yeah. But also, did it make an impact when people did take the vaccine? And if you were over 70, there seems to be some data that says that it was helpful. But that was a choice, and that was the key that that I pushed for, is people have to decide for themselves.
Mask. Wow. There's, I wanted to cover some part of the show where we talk about our current stuff. I want to cover the law enforcement. I want to cover the 2A stuff. It's kind of the show. But you give such good and valid points to what's really real. And it all falls down to the choice, the people's choice right here. And when we get dictated into something, you're going to have a whole lot of people not happy.
And for me, it's a liberty issue, and people couldn't define it, but it was, you were taking away their liberty, their right to choose. And that's where people were just rebelling over all of this. And so we're going to get through it, but we're going to have to learn the lessons from this. When we're going to look back at what did we make a mistake. And I remember when he closed the schools, and then he said they couldn't do proms and they couldn't do their graduations,
weddings,
baptisms, funerals. I mean, and it was like, this is insanity. We're stopping humanity, life. I mean, and so it was like, people are never going to forget that, because we could have let people make their own decisions about that, and he chose not to.
And when you take away that choice, you've put in a totalitarian type of system.
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned about. I mean, if you can do that, and then you force people to take a vaccine, what's the next thing? And so that's why people are pushing back. In politics, I've never seen so many new people engaged as they are right now. And it's just your average neighbor that said, I'm off the couch. I work 9 to 5, and I'm not going to be on the couch anymore. I'm getting out there, and I want my state back. I want my country back. And we're going to help them do that.
I have a good friend that lives in Champlin. He's Senator John Hoffman, and he's on the other side of the aisle, but we get along really famous. We have a great time. We talk, we talk through things. Yeah. And when this first opened up, and I says, John, I'm kind of taking a science approach as well. I said, John, do you know that UVC is the killer of this virus? And we can kill this virus if we could only get these people. UVC is what? C-band UVC is 930 nanometers. It keeps you, it's like a black light.
Yeah.
But it doesn't do you inside, it does you outside to limit the spread. We were going to develop a booth. You walk in, you get hit with the lights, you walk out, at least you know externally you're clean. But nobody wanted to listen to it, including Waltz, because we threw it at his desk. He just ignored it.
What is sunlight? So if you're in Florida, does that have a similar result or not?
Sunlight's more in the lower EM band.
Okay.
UVC is what they use in, let's say you go buy milk, okay, at the store and you see these purple lights at the deal.
Yep.
Well, those purple lights, when you cross your hand through that barrier, that's UVC. That's the higher nanometer band. And as your hand goes in, you grab your milk. As you pull your milk out, everything that goes through that light is white.
I never knew. See, you get on your show and you learn all kinds of new things.
So that UVC was a big thing. And John goes, well, I don't know if this is going to be a thing. He goes, Hutner, I know you. It's probably real, but how do we get it to the next step? But Waltz never engaged this. And if there was somebody that had somewhat of a solution, now UVC will also make you go blind. So you don't want to go and stare at it.
Right.
The suns are lower EM. This is UV. This is higher. This is like UVS. But he wouldn't engage it. And if there was a way to stop or even listen, wouldn't a governor listen to that? If you were governor, would you listen to some Gomer in a bean field or in his studio podcast basement? Would you listen to that?
Honestly, I listen to everyone. I mean, I'll give them the time of day. I think it gives people value when they at least know that they're heard. And they can be very different from me, but that's how I learn. That's how I've been a good leader, because I'm not afraid to listen to different points of view.
Well, this was a mankind thing here, and I didn't want to patent it. I have several patents, and I didn't want to go and say, well, I'm going to take this, because it's not about that. It's about what's right for the people. So I wanted you to know that first off, because I thought Waltz failed us at that point.
Now, that was one of many. Then, I mean, the public safety is the other one I know you're going to get to, but that was more frustrating, frankly.
So we have had, I don't know if you've seen this bill come across yet. We're starting to call the William Shakespeare law. And during the COVID, because of these restrictions, they weren't going to apply any monoclones. And there's another chemical that we take.
Ivermectin?
There it is, ivermectin.
Yep.
And I called my doctor and says, hey, I want you to prescribe this to me. And he goes, we can't do it. Hospital Association won't allow you. I said, hold on. I'm the guy paying the bills. I want you to do this. Well, the William Shakespeare bill, we'd lost an uncle who had it. He wasn't dying from it, but he had it. We're not letting you in the room. We're not going to let you see him. We're not going to let you. You can't take the ivermectin. You can't try it. And we're a right to try state.
Yeah.
How do you?
You can't square it. I mean, and again, you go to places like Florida with Governor DeSantis, and they had monoclonal clinics and let people decide the direction to go. I had data from a University of Michigan doctor that did research on a lot of different treatments. Some showed very little effectiveness. Others were pretty darn effective. Vitamin D was pretty effective. And let people decide. And if they want the vaccine, I'm not opposed to the vaccine either. Don't get me wrong. I think people are the ones that have to decide. But if they want ivermectin or something else, they should be able to do that.
And with the right to try state, what do they got to lose? If I'm dying and I want to try that, what choice do I have?
Tell you what, as governor, I would move in that direction to let people have more decision-making over their life. I mean, it's been taken from them. I would never do a mask mandate. I'd never do a vaccine mandate. People have to decide. The schools should have stayed open. Kids should not have been forced to wear masks. Parochial schools were open in Minnesota. Schools were open in other states and other countries. Then they didn't want to test the kids, scholastically I'm talking about. I said, oh no, we're going to test because I know what the results are going to be. And they were way down, and their mental health had more problems. And, that's learn the lessons. I mean, I think that's what I hope, even in Democrat states, that they'll take some time to look at the data and say, maybe we didn't do the right thing.
And again, we can understand not doing the right thing to a point.
First few months.
Yeah.
After that, you could see clearly the trends.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And I don't know. I looked at that and went, okay. I told the wife, I says, hey, when they close public schools, you'll have my attention. And the next morning, guess what happens? They close the schools.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we're a gun shop at our store as well. And I says, when this happens, ammo's going to go through the roof.
Did it?
And it did. It did.
I already had a big supply.
Well, as far as resell, we tried to buy inventory. We couldn't do it. It's like, oh, come on. Really?
Yeah.
Now, I was kind of going this direction because if a governor was to have that type of control, what would stop him?
That's the point. I could not stop him in the Senate. He had virtual king-like power. I mean, it was very difficult to watch. And then after a while, he didn't really listen, not even to the House, in my opinion. I mean, they'll have to, decide if that was true. I'm talking about House Democrats, because a lot of moderate Democrats have expressed real frustration with the lack of listening and just doing whatever you want to do as governor. And so, as governor, my expectation is the House and Senate will submit a bill that curtails emergency powers for the governor, and I would sign that in a heartbeat, because if the governor if it's an emergency, he can call a special session, and if it's a true emergency, the House and Senate, whether you're Democrat or Republican, you're going to work with the governor and get it done.
Mm-hmm. Well, if the William Shakespeare bill comes across your desk, will you sign it? Because it's not going to be very friendly for the medical system. It's going to be friendly for the people.
Well, based on what you've described, I would be supportive. I haven't read the bill, but the idea that the individual gets to decide what they want to use and the treatments they want, I think that's completely appropriate. I mean, think about all the different kinds of health aid treatment that people do with medicines and herbs, and they have a right to do that.
Did you hear about the guy is out west of here, like Orno or something? He went to Mercy. They put him on machines. They wouldn't prescribe any monocles or ivermectin. They had to fly him to Texas, where he passed, but they wouldn't do it. Did you hear that story?
I did. I know Representative Shane Meckland, had a hand in helping to get that person somewhere else to try. And that's the point, is they had the ability to try. And my wife and I lost her mother-in-law during this whole thing, and
I'm sorry.
Partly COVID, and you couldn't see him until the very end. And I mean, there's just so many stories from so many people of trauma over not being able to socialize with loved ones in so many different settings. And that's the part that I think will be lost. I mean, that's all of that humanity, I think, is what you said, that we lost. But now it's time to start building again, and I'm not going to ever go down that direction again.
What is your big takeaway on this first segment? What do you want people to know in a nutshell?
That I'm going to trust the people. I mean, I think that's the underlying message that myself and a lot of Republicans, it's the people need to be in charge. It's not government over them. It's really the people over the government is what it was meant to be. And that's what I want for the people, that they have control of their destinies. They're responsible for their lives. They're people that want to make a noticeable difference in their communities, and we want to help them do that. We don't want to so limit their ability to do anything that they feel like there's a thumb on them. And, I will not do that.
Great takeaway. As what Ronald Reagan said back in the 80s, I'm here from the government. We're here to help.
Ronald Reagan was the first president I voted for in 1980. And I remember he said, if you can't make them see the light, make them feel the heat. And I just thought that was a great line.
Now I got a new one. Thank you for that.
You bet.
Okay, we are 22 minutes into this first segment. We're going to take a commercial break. Paul, stand by. And I think we should talk about the next segment of, let's talk about the police and some of this 2A in this police thing. That work for you?
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, Podcast 2215, stand by. Need a quick, healthy boost to start your day? Try Superfuel. Superfuel by Casmo is loaded with vitamins and healthy ingredients that will give you a quick, healthy boost. Make Superfuel a great-tasting, low-calorie addition to your daily regimen. Order Superfuel at www.superfuel.me or call 833-FUEL-X12, FUEL-X12, or 833-383-5912, Superfuel. Welcome back to Hutcast. Hutcast has got a extraordinary member of the studio today, and it's Paul Gazelka. Paul Gazelka from the Minnesota State Senate. Paul, welcome to the show again.
I'm having a blast.
I hope you do, because you're a natural at this, and we're going to have to get you a microphone for like Christmas or something. So let's shift some gears here and grab some clutch on the Second Amendment. Let's go further yet to the 3rd Precinct. Now, I have a lot of friend members in the SWAT team, and they were a lot of PD. Minneapolis was a shambles wreck, and they can't even begin to understand what these police were going through. What if you were the governor? Would you switch this gear? How would you do that?
I would have done it dramatically different. The death of George Floyd was on a Monday. It was terrible. I saw the video. I don't know any police officers that said it was done right. But the riots started Tuesday, and I think if you were way on the leading edge of it, that's when the National Guard should have been there. But certainly by Wednesday, when the mayor asked for the National Guard, they should have been out in full force. They were damaging buildings everywhere. Thursday is when the 3rd Precinct went down. So had the governor responded when he should have, that never would have gone down. And that was the first police precinct since the 1800s that had been burned down. And the police wanted to defend it. They knew the value of that, and they let it burn, and they just called it bricks and mortars, and it was like unbelievable. Thursday is when I texted the governor, said, "Where are you?" I mean, it was like silence. And then Friday, same thing. I mean, it was now by Friday, 1,500 businesses damaged or destroyed. And I texted the governor again. Then I went on KARE 11. Then I called the White House. I just said, you guys are going to have to act, because he's not acting. And finally, Saturday, they brought the National Guard in full force. They enforced the curfew, and they began to take the streets back, but it was too late. And I told them early. I talked to police early. They knew that you needed a lot of National Guard out there because the crowd was out of control, and you have to stop them. And that was the biggest mistake of his entire role as governor, is he did not act, and he constantly would disregard the police or believe that another black man shot at the hands of police. He instantly would throw the police under the bus, and as a result, before the death of George Floyd, there was 800 Minneapolis police. They wanted 400 more, and now they're down to around 300. So that's how low it is. They can barely do a 911 call. And then when they do arrest somebody, the prosecutors in Minneapolis and St. Paul and the judges, more often than not, they let them go. I mean, it's so now the criminal is not afraid to just keep doing it. And so, in fact, I have 2 bills right now that I'm working on in the Senate. First one is, if you carjack, you're going to jail for a minimum of 2 years. You don't get to be let go. And then the second one is, if you've had a felony with a gun, and now you have another felony with a gun, minimum of 5 years in jail. I mean, it's like you don't get to be a revolving door. And we got to take our streets back. And as far as jail time, Minnesota ranks 49th about as far as the amount of jail time.
Holy cow. We
got to move that needle. Let them know that if you do the crime, you're going to do the time.
Now, I interviewed Jai Hansen for Hennepin County Sheriff.
Yep.
And he's really on the Hayton page for the free bail project.
Yeah. It's a major problem. I mean, if people outside of Minnesota in particular are paying bail to get people out that are protesting, trying to stop the pipelines, all the different things they're doing. And I think how it works is, once that bail money comes back, it goes to the individual that did the protesting, and it's like, this is a ridiculous system, and we got to change it.
A payment for being a snothead?
I'm 99% sure that's what happens.
Holy, I never knew that.
Yep. So you learned something on your show.
Huh? Well, Jai was pretty straightforward with it, and I put some hard questions on him. And his first thing is, he's going to clean that up. And I said, how do you clean this up? Because, you're an elected official like everybody else, and you really can't make policy.
It's more from us, the governor and the legislative branch. And so here's what we can do. We need more police on the streets. And so 2 of my bills, one is a $10,000 signing bonus. If you sign up to be a new police officer, after 1 year, you're going to get that. I hope we can get it through the House and Senate. The second one is, if you're over 50, there's a $5,000 retention bonus if you'll stay at least 2 more years, because those are the people that are leaving because they don't want to go to jail. They don't want to make a mistake.
They don't want to be a compotter.
Yep. So those are those two. And then if Minneapolis and St. Paul will not aggressively hire police, we give them local government aid, and it's supposed to be for public safety. And so we can tailor that so that part of that local government aid is directly towards having more police. The second thing the legislative branch can do is more funding for Hennepin and Ramsey County police so that they have more police, because they have the same authority to come into Minneapolis and St. Paul, so they can help. And then the governor has control over the highway patrol, and I would work with the highway patrol. I wouldn't tell them what to do. I would ask them what they could do to help. Like, they don't want to be down there every Friday night,
right,
but they might come to do a surge or whatever is necessary to take our streets back. But we have to take our streets back. People want to feel safe. The carjacking is 2 a day. Minneapolis and St. Paul both have the highest murder rates ever, and that's got to stop. And it first stops by being tough on crime, and then you got to work with the minority communities. What are the things that we can do to turn this around? Because we all want to be players in making it work. For example, if you're a minor under age 18, you can go to jail for carjacking, but why are we not putting them in detention centers that give them some rehabilitation skills? We're not. That's not happening right now. They're just letting them go. And so those are some basics that we can do right now.
So a moment of pause to think about what you did, where we don't have that.
Yep, there's nothing right now. You're right back out.
Now, if we were to go to the second gear here, the thing that Jai said is he's a big 2A supporter. We all learned from the Kim Potter experience that, accidents happen, and it was an accident in my mind. And Kim lives in Champlin here. You can't predict what someone's going to do. So if you're downtown and you're from the suburbs, I tell my friends, I says, look, you don't know what's going to happen if they jack you. You don't have time to reach for your weapon, because I'm a carry guy. I told Jai, I says, what would you do if you were down there? And he says, I would make sure that it was at the ready.
Yeah.
Now, the people who are prepared will be if it's a black kid who jacks your car and all of a sudden someone wants to throw the race card out there and you have to deal with all that, when it was truly just a crime on crime, the people who carry the guns are the ones that are going to get hurt bad. There's no legislation to protect us guys other than the Constitution.
It is why I support Stand Your Ground. This is the third year that I've co-authored that. This year, Senator Andy Lang from Wilmer is carrying the ball on that.
Oh.
But people want to know whether you're in your car, your home, somewhere where you're with your property, that you have the ability to protect yourself. And that's not the case right now. And I have my permit to carry. I more often than not carry at the Capitol. I just think it's wise. But I'll tell you, I get invited by the police to go down to different locations to learn. I do drive-bys with Minneapolis or not drive-bys, but drive along with Minneapolis and St. Paul police. But so they invited me down to the Lunds, Byerly, and Edina where the carjacking occurred. It was the second one in 2 days. It was the same 4 people, probably, I think they were under age 18. But what they did is they targeted a wealthy car, and they looked for a vulnerable senior that would come out, and they'd beat the tar out of him. In this case, it was a lady.
Right.
But a Good Samaritan blocked them with his or her car, and they banged into 4 cars, and they couldn't get out. But a second Good Samaritan had his permit to carry, and he took his gun out, and he pointed at them, and they fled. And what would have the scenario been had he not been there, right? And then what if something had happened? What would be the scenario too? But that's where, the permit to carry has become more important, because we don't have enough police and the criminals are far more aggressive. And so I think that's part of the solution is, and keep it, I never brag about carrying. I never brag about what kind of gun I have. I would never want to shoot somebody.
Nobody does.
And I don't, the whole idea is to try to retreat if you can. But that's why I carry, because myself, but also I want to protect my family, and I'm protecting my country. That's the Second Amendment at its core.
You said a lot of buzzwords there, and all the Republicans are flying off their chariot now. You fly away, guys. You make that happen. Because I'm on your page. And in 21, the highest record number of carries in the state.
And a lot of women are carrying now too, which I think is a good thing.
As they should. You know, a cop friend of mine, she's a female, and we were talking about this, and I says, well, you can't overpower a man because you're just not big enough. And she looked at me and says, well, how big do I need to be to pull the trigger?
Right? I mean, that's exactly it. And, you know, and I stood up for the police after the death and all the riots. Then the Democrats wanted to do all these inappropriate anti-police measures, and I just said, I'm not doing them. I'll find things that we can agree on. We'll work with the communities, but if the police don't sign off because they think it's bad for their ability to keep the streets safe, I'm not going to do it. And as a result of that, I was already been endorsed for governor by the Highway Patrol. The chiefs of police gave me their Legislator of the Year award in September, and the Minnesota Peace and Police Officers gave me their Legislator of the Year award in June. And so my main issue is going to be public safety as far as what we have to do. I mean, there's so many other issues, election integrity and making sure that parents know what's going on in their kids' school. But the one that is moving many moderate people towards the Republican Party is they don't feel safe.
Let's say you get in. Let's say Jai gets in, or maybe the gal, Kauaya. And would you ask them to be more pro-2A, having stations everywhere, having so we don't have to go downtown and get our permits covered and renewed and all this? Because there's one in Osseo, there's one in Plymouth, I think. Would you support them guys making sure that happens?
I want the people that want to be able to carry to be able to do so in a convenient way. I don't want to make it difficult. In fact, I have a bill, I don't know if it's going to get heard or not this year, that your permit to carry is lifetime. You don't have to do it every 5 years.
Oh, that would be so nice.
You know, it would. I mean, you know, and I do think it's very wise for people to get training. I think, you know, but forcing them to is, you know, that's where I'd rather be more flexible. But I learned in the training. I've handled guns my whole life. I got my first guns when I was 12. Did gun safety, did all the things that you need to do. So I'm a big fan of training. It's just that, you know, to do it every 5 years, I'm not sure that that's necessary.
It seems like a tax that's constantly being caught up on, because you got to pay the thing, you got to do the class, and I get it. These guys got to make a living. Gene German was on the show. He did a 6-part segment. Awesome show. If you get a chance, listen to that one. He is a Leoso trainer, and he called some pretty good shots, and I learned a lot on that show. But my point is, we need this as a society because the response time in Minneapolis is 21 minutes on a call. Now, you know what happens in 21 minutes? You come out and make a report.
Yeah.
It takes 21 seconds, and that's a long time when you're hypersensitive.
Yeah, and it's not the police officer's fault. They don't have enough people.
Not at all.
It'd be better if they had enough police for 2 in a car. It'd be better that they can walk the beat places. They should be still in the schools. They kicked them out of many of the schools, and that's where they could build relationships with the young men that are in those schools and need coaches, need teachers, and I think they need to be around good cops. I think those are the things that we can do that can turn this thing around.
You have to understand, too, that someone told me, he was an immigrant from Austria, and he looks at today's people, and he looks at me and says, you know, today, these kids, the fathers need fathers.
Yeah.
And that rang cemetery with me. It's like, you know, he's got a point, because there's a lot of people without that guidance in their lifetime. But can the government replace that? I don't think we can.
No, we God willing, we'll get back to the place where, you know, moms and dads are working through their problems and raising kids. But in the meantime, we need teachers, we need coaches, we need police officers to be male role models for some of these people, and that can make a difference in many of these people's lives. Speaking
of role models, we had done a segment on CRT in the schools. Now, I don't know where this CRT engaged itself from, and I don't agree with it. I don't like what they teach. Now, if you just assume you're a young man and you don't have a father figure or that guidance, and all of a sudden you get indoctrinated into this agenda, what do you think they're going to think like, right?
That's a good point. And, you know, what I have a bill this year, another one, because why wait till you're governor? Start working on it now.
Right.
But, one that I have is curriculum transparency, that the parents, I think if they're in the driver's seat, we're going to get better outcomes. And so my bill simply says that you have to post at the beginning of every school year that the curriculum's available, and number two, it's available for free. And then if you find something that you just don't want your kids to learn, you can provide an alternative piece of education to not do that. It could be sex education standards. It could be books in English. It could be a rendition of history that you disagree with. But in that way, I'm not picking particular issues. I'm just saying the parents are in the driver's seat. It might look slightly different in Minneapolis than it does in Brainerd.
Right.
But the parents are in the driver's seat. And that's something I'm pushing. I mean, I want people to get a full view of our history. I don't mind talking about our flaws, but it should also be what we learned from them, but also all of our many, many triumphs of America, so that when kids graduate, they know they're citizens of the greatest country in the world,
right.
that they're not ashamed, that they're proud to be Americans.
And with CRT, I see a lot of the cancel culture that goes with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you graduate in Who's George Washington and you think he's a slave owner rather than, one of the greatest leaders of our country, that was flawed. Slavery was a terrible thing.
You bet it was.
But Western culture is the one that first ended slavery. So it was a terrible thing. But thank God we had men and women that rose up and said, we got to get rid of this.
Mm-hmm. Time to go with that, right?
Yep.
So I've studied. I had a philanthropist on the studio show here, and he was a CRT guy. He was in the school district. He didn't like the cancel culture with it. He didn't like the canceling of God with it, and it was all this. And the guy was spot on. So I would assume and hope, because of your background and your morals here, the compass is straight on, and we can kind of get rid of some of that.
Yeah, what I see it being attacked is basically our Christian heritage. I mean, every monument in Washington, D.C., the pledge, the coin, all acknowledge God, but it feels like they want to wipe that out. Mm-hmm. They want to wipe out the value of our Constitution, the beautiful document that really is the longest Constitution in history. Those are two, and then capitalism. They want to change that, and
right.
So it's kind of like they want to remake America into something that I think would make us mediocre. And I want to be that country that it's American exceptionalism. There's nobody like America. And that's what I'm going to keep fighting for. And it's based on some of those core principles that I just brought up. And so that's what I'm fighting for. So when they try to change those things, I'm going to push back. I'm old enough to know the things that have brought America greatness, and I know the things that will bring us down.
Let's not say down, because that is just I can't even fathom that as a two-way, God-fearing, gun-supporting, constitutionalist. How do you change my life? Here's the thing about that. Now, I have nothing wrong with the LGBTQRS community. I don't care one way or the other. But when they decide that they're going to choose for me how I should think, it becomes a problem for me. Now, again, their thing is their thing, and I'm okay with that. But when you don't think their way, they seem to get a little irritated.
Yeah, and we're meant to be a pluralistic society, which means more than one thought can exist with another thought. In other words, I don't have to agree with you to respect you as a fellow American,
Yep.
But I'm also not going to cancel you.
Because of it.
Yes, and that's the part that is the left is trying to do of the conservative right. I mean, I see it all day long, and I don't see us trying to cancel their culture.
Right.
We're just trying to let us live the way we know we want to live, and you can do whatever you want to do. I mean, that's how it's supposed to be.
It should be that way. Again, we shouldn't dictate what they do, but we don't shun them for it.
Exactly.
And
we don't.
We get our butts shunned all the time.
Yeah, I've had a number of bills that they have picketed my business up in Brainerd because I took a stand, but I have a right to have my stand too.
Yes. Okay, what did we forget in this segment? We covered 2A, we covered the police, we talked about Jai a little bit, we talked about...
we got a big surplus we could talk about.
Maybe we'll do that for last segment, because we are 19 minutes and 47 seconds into this second segment. Should we come back with that?
That sounds great.
Okay. Hotcast is going to take a commercial break. It is 20 minutes into this segment, and we'll be right back. Stand by. Now a word from our sponsors. Today's sponsor in part by Excel Roofing. Excel Roofing, they do it all. Roofs, siding, framing. You need a house? Give Excel a call. I've used these guys personally in the past, have a professional crew. They're conscious of your job, and they want to produce the finest quality of craftsmanship available. Excel Roofing, 763-712-0757. Again, 763-712-0757. Excel Roofing, Dayton, Minnesota. In the studio with Senator Paul Gazelka, and we're going to talk budget. Now, we've got a whole lot of budget in here. We've got all over the news. It's either Ukraine or it's the budget, Minnesota. So if you were going to talk about this, where do you want to start? You had mentioned 3 areas.
Well, I want to say, first of all, how did we get there? And the federal government had 3 stimulus bills that put a lot of money into the states. It was irresponsible spending, in my opinion, but it was tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars that came into Minnesota, into nonprofits, into local governments, into schools, into the state government. And so, of course, there's going to be more money coming into the taxes, the revenue coming in, because people are spending it. So I didn't spend it all last year as leader. I didn't want to. I wanted tax relief. The governor wanted to spend it. So that carried over, and now we're up to almost $3 billion, plus reserves of almost $3 billion, plus $1 billion of federal money not spent. And so I'm pushing for multi-billion-dollar permanent tax cuts, because the governor wants one-time money in Walls checks, he calls them. He wants a gas tax holiday, and neither one of those are the right way to go. And so the permanent tax cuts that we're proposing, the first one, my highest priority, is getting rid of the tax on Social Security income. We have people leaving our state. We want them to stay. And the one way you can get them to stay is to not tax them when they can go some other state and not have to pay that tax. So second thing I want to do is lower the income tax rates. I'm flexible about how we do that, but that's the best way to get the people that are actually paying the bills. And so I wouldn't lower sales tax. I think whether you're legal or illegal, you're paying that. So that one I like the way it is. But
okay.
So that's the point. We should get that back to the people. They're going to want to spend it. I don't think it's wise to spend it.
Now, your business is in Brainerd, mine's in Hennepin County. And we keep getting hit with the disparity tax. We just come off a disparity tax when in 05, 06, when the markets crashed, and now we're back in it because they want to take extra money from businesses.
Well, the fiscal disparity between communities is difficult to change because the communities that are getting the money have legislators that want to keep it that way, right? So it's hard to change. It's basically wealthy communities are paying more to communities that are not as wealthy. Business property taxes are already too high, and we have lowered them a little bit over the last few years, but about a third of what a business owner pays in property taxes goes right to the state. It doesn't help their local county in any way. I'd like to get rid of all that one.
Okay. I sit on an EDA of the Dayton, and we see all these things come through, and you got to kind of shake your head. You want businesses to thrive. You want them to be in our county, Hennepin County. We want them to be in everywhere. But when you look at them in the eye and say, if you go 2 more miles into Anoka County, you're going to save a ton of dough.
Yeah, and the state in general is too high. And I talk to a lot of business owners because I understand business, and whether it's big business or small business, and many are either considering leaving or have left or have expanded somewhere else, and it's taxes and regulation, and that it needs to change. I mean, we have a beautiful state with so many resources and so many great people, but our taxes are not good and our regulations are worse. I can tell you there's a company in southwest Minnesota called True Shrimp. They produce shrimp in a factory setting, and it's very, very clean. It's a brilliant idea. So now they're ready to expand, and they want to go to Laverne, Minnesota, and the MPCA makes it so difficult that it's going to be more than a year, and like a snap of the fingers, they're up and running in Madison, South Dakota. And that's over and over and over. where different states are saying,
Come on in.
you're a business, we want to help
Right.
you. In Minnesota, it's like, you're the business, kiss the government's ring, and then we'll decide.
Yes.
And that's what we need to change. I mean, we really need to be business friendly. Then everybody prospers. The jobs are available to the people.
Yep. And
Everybody wins.
They're on the
Yep.
tax roll. They're making money.
Everybody wins.
And not like businesses want to pay tax, but we don't want to take it in the wrong side either.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, we don't need the patron pay us. I will grant you. And a lot of the MPCAs were kind of that way.
Oh, all over the state. And that's, the most recent commissioner we forced out. She was forcing electric car mandates without legislation. She was suing the taconite industry up in northeast Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
She was making it difficult for farmers to spread their manure on the fields. It was like, enough already. You're ruining too many people's lives. You got to work with these people, not against them.
As a shop, fixing cars, we have these things called, it's from the MPCA, and it's SQSGs, VSQSGs, and VVQSGs. It's a quantity generator waste license. Now, when you take old oil out of a car, we have to give that back, and it has to be all reported, and there's just so much red tape. But if we were to use it to heat our building, now there's even more red tape. So these waste oil burners, they are polluted. They can pollute, but you got to keep them clean. There's a maintenance cycle there. But if you have one of these, you automatically elevate to the next level of your writing checks. So we ain't fixing nothing. We're just paying more. Yeah. So the money you didn't spend in heating oil right now, which is insane, we're going to pay in a tax so that we can burn it cleanly. Doesn't that sound... what planet are these more people from? Because that don't make sense. CFLs, light bulbs. We are the first shop to go complete LED. We are the first shop with as big as we are to go VSQSG, which is a very small quantity generator. And we keep getting it. The hits keep coming. So I understand what businesses don't want to do this. I understand. South Dakota, if my client base wasn't here, I would certainly be looking there.
I've told a lot of businesses, give me one more election cycle. I've told a lot of seniors, give me one more election cycle, because I think we can turn it around. Wisconsin 10 years ago, Republicans won House, Senate, and governor, and they had all of that for 8 years. And then the last few, they've had just the House and Senate. But there was a study of best places to retire, and Minnesota was 49th. and South Dakota, Wisconsin was either 14th or 17th. And the only difference was 8 years of Republicans leading the government.
No, boy.
We can do it.
We can do it. Well, let's do this. Here's another one for you. Are you familiar with batteries?
You bet.
Okay. Do you understand a LiPo system? Lithium polymer?
No.
Okay, lithium polymer is the new batteries. It's not in electric cars yet, but it is out in the rest of the world, and is a very excellent technology, just like hydrogen technology is, in which, of course, I got a patent in one of them. And these batteries, called LiPos, are now going to stop using lithium, and they're going to be kind of a polymer, an iron phosphate. Now, as governor, this would totally open up the iron range for that taconite, because you set my mind that way when you said that. Now, lithium iron phosphate battery.
Well, it's brilliant, but I have to ask you, do they also need copper or nickel or cobalt, which is also up on the iron range?
I don't know.
I know they need them for I know they need them for batteries. I just don't know if they need them for that kind of battery.
Well, if you look at the weight of nickel and lead and all that stuff, say a group 34 battery, which is 11 inches wide, it's 9 inches tall and 7 inches thick. This battery weighs normally 50, 60 pounds. Maybe 40, 50. I could be a lot on the fat side of that. But now you take the same battery in a iron lithium polymer. This battery weighs 8 pounds.
Well, you get better gas mileage too.
Exactly. And the life cycle of these batteries are 7,000 complete cycles. They're not deep rated, but they're deep rated. And these batteries have a shelf life of 10 years.
Wow.
Car batteries, flooded batteries, do not have that. Whether it's a car, whether it's a tractor, whether it's an ATV. If this boosts that economy for the iron range, what would you do up on the range to help these businesses fight the red tape of being MPCA? How would you get them going?
Well, Dayton actually said something that I wished he'd pushed for, and that was much quicker permitting process. So you can be tough on the permits, but make it happen faster. Polymet, the first copper nickel mine up there, it's been more than 17 years from the time they started, and that's, I believe it was $500 million of permitting.
Oh.
And I mean, that's ridiculous. And so the permitting in a prompt fashion, other countries, Germany, I know that they did their permitting much quicker. They decided you're either going to be in this or you're not, but they make that decision quicker. And so that's one of the big things that we can do in many, many industries. I mean, copper, nickel, and cobalt that are up in that region. I'm from Virginia, Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
I worked in Mintac when I was going to college.
Okay.
And so I know that that's the best place to mine it. Our regulations are safer. We're not using child labor. It's a strategic mineral for the United States. And now we see Russia being aggressive, and we say, boy, maybe we better have our natural gas and oil and minerals here and not relying on them. And so, that would be my commitment. I'm like I said, I'm an Iron Ranger, so I'm going to be very interested in helping them.
Now, when I call him O'Biden, sorry, it's my nickname. When O'Biden decided to shut that pipeline down, and it's through Canada, him and Trudeau made this pact. I don't know what it was, blood pact. If we could get our Iron Range lit up again and start getting some, North Dakota, South Dakota fuel coming this way, would you reach out to those governors and say, hey, we really need this? Yeah.
I'm going to be, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, they're all Republican governors, all common sense, and we would be a great team. Just getting the Line 3 pipeline through northern Minnesota, it was replacing an old pipe with a new technology, safer pipe.
Okay.
And again, it took over 5 years of permitting. They constantly were trying to shut down the project. They didn't want it to happen. We had people from out of state tying themselves to the pipeline. But that's the kind of thing that I'm going to push against. We've got to get more activity and make it easier. I mean, in these particular examples, there was no place else for them to go. So the copper nickel mining, there's no other place. So they're willing to put the effort in. But there's many manufacturers or businesses that it's so difficult, they just say, I'd much rather go somewhere else.
Yep, it's easier to stop than to work.
Yep.
And they keep throwing that at us. Again, the hits keep coming. And I don't know for life of me. I keep telling my wife, I said, being self-employed or an entrepreneur is the only job you'll work 80 to not work 40.
And you're having fun. And, on the Iron Range, I recruited Tom Bach and David Tomassoni, senators, Democrat senators, now align with us. And the last straw was the Democrat state party said they don't want any copper nickel mining in Minnesota. And Tom Bach said, that's my area of the state. And now they're with us. I mean, so common sense Democrats, they haven't really changed. They just realized that Republicans are the place for them to be.
The party left them.
That's exactly what he said.
And I tell some friends around here, I won't say names. He listens to my show. The party has left you. You need to make the change. But he won't engage. I mean, he still likes that D next to his name, and I respect him for that. Good friend. But sometimes you just got to go, what?
My door is open to those moderate Democrats that want safe streets. They want their economy to work. They want their kids to get a good education. Come on over. Our door's open.
Well, that'll put a bee in Walt's bonnet, won't it? We'll have bee bonnet bucks for Waltz. What am I missing here? You got me thinking so much. My head is just spinning with questions, but they don't come out as fast as I.
Minnesota is a great place. I mean, the people are phenomenal. They're all across the state. They're so unique, and they just want to live free. They want to be able to work 9 to 5 or start a career, be an entrepreneur. Just want to live their lives, and that's what we want to give to them. I mean, they're excited to be part of Minnesota. They just don't want their life crimped down by government. And so that's what I see coming. I think there's going to be real prosperity coming to Minnesota, and people are going to be breathing a deep breath, a sigh of relief that the Democrats are out of power. And I believe that's going to happen this November.
Well, not just Democrats, but common sense.
Yeah, it is common sense. I mean,
common sense should be out of power. Or, I'm sorry.
In power, right?
Yeah, in power, not the other way. You're so spot on with that.
Well, and I've been in government long enough that I know what's good for the people, and it is trusting them to lead their lives, and whatever I can do to make their lives better, that's what government should be aimed at, and not controlling every part of their life, but helping them to live their lives in a way that they want to live.
I pick on my senator buddies and I say, what? Do you consider the people that voted for you constituents? Or do you consider they're your voting base? And they look at me, well, I don't understand the question. So you know where I'm going with this?
I do.
So when you say my constituents, that shows a subserviary type of situation. And I tell them, look, we don't conserve to nobody.
Yeah.
You put us here.
No, it's exactly right. And I feel like I get to serve the people. So whether I was the leader of the Senate or, God willing, I become governor, that's my ability to serve the people. That's what a good leader is supposed to do.
Lead by example.
Yep.
Not force. What am I forgetting? So, okay, we covered some EPA stuff. We covered some. I'm really hoping that this battery technology takes off. They got to do some testing in the cold because we suck up here in cold.
Yeah, let's hit electric car mandates, because one of the commissioners was removed because they did the California electric car mandates, or car emissions. They did without legislation, and we didn't feel like they had the right, but the courts in Minnesota backed them up. And so January of 24, car dealers are going to have to carry 7% of their stock in electric cars, even if demand is only what it is today, which is 1%. And I believe the market needs to drive that. I think electric cars are the future. I think it's going to be a great idea, but not when people are forced to do it. I mean, right now, cold weather states, it doesn't work quite as well. The battery doesn't work quite as long. And I do a lot of long road trips, and I'm thinking, well, how's that going to work?
It would be funny if you pulled a generator with a trailer.
Right.
To charge your car to get someplace.
Yep. So because they didn't do it without legislation, as governor, I will stop that and let the market drive it. We also have to build out infrastructure, electric vehicle infrastructure.
Yes.
So I see it coming, but it shouldn't be forced on the people. And that would drive up the cost of all cars because we weren't quite ready for it.
If you build it, they will come.
If you force them to drive it, they still won't drive
They'll
it.
vote Democrat. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud? Now, this forcing them into the electric car, I'm kind of a car guy, so I see the value in that. But you said infrastructure is such a problem, and it's true. But how are you going to just overnight, and this is a kind of a push on the Dem side, how are you going to overnight shut all that off?
Yeah, that's the point. It's going to take time. And technology has to get better for quick charges and all kinds of them. That's the other part that I know people smarter than me are thinking about that, but you don't. It's got to drive it because demand is pushing us there. I know people are interested and ready for electric cars as long as they work the way a gas-driven one does. And right now we're not quite there.
Now, I hold a patent in hydrogen technology. It's called an HHO Brown's gas, which actually is a water in a reactor that's separated. It's not a PEM. It's more of it's a hydrogen cake. And it's a dual fuel system. Now, at gas at $7 a gallon, I was telling the wife this morning, I said, when gas was $4 a gallon, we were all over this. But, if it gets to $7, we had training all over the globe for people coming in to learn how to retrofit their cars. So it runs on water. It uses potassium hydroxide. It mixes to a reactor. We pulse modulate the cell. Now, what could you do for a company ready to push on development, lose the red tape, be less dependent, this is a buzzword, foreign oil. Could you have a system in place for guys like, us engineers who say, we should do this?
Yeah, we do have what's called an angel investment credit, and it does focus on entrepreneurs that have ideas and don't have a lot of capital. And that's a big part of how it's called Medical Alley. All of the different medical companies in Minnesota, that it's sort of like Silicon Valley out in California. We have Medical Alley here.
Okay.
But a lot of that was fostered through some of the things done at the University of Minnesota, this angel investment credit, but helping entrepreneurs start up. And, so that would fit into that category. I mean, we want to reward creativity. We want to reward entrepreneurs for trying and doing it in Minnesota. And then the point is
staying here.
That's the next point, is making sure our taxes and regulations are such that they don't then just leave and go somewhere else.
Now, this patent was and don't get me wrong, I'm not patting myself on the back here, but I think it's a very viable technology if we get past the freezing stuff. Now, we could take any car, introduce our computer into this car, like in between the sensors and the unit, ratiometrically cut back the fuel as we're increasing hydrogen production. And this car literally runs with water.
That's really cool.
And it's nothing new. It's called Brown's gas, and it's been done back in the 30s and 40s when they were doing welders. But it was very flammable, and it creates the plasma, the third state of matter, to burn through big, thick pieces of metal.
That's a problem.
Well, we just, we ramp it down.
Yeah.
This is such a thing that the big government should be like, how do we make this work? And this what do you call it? Angel investment?
Angel investment credit. Yeah.
And how would an average Joe guy know that this is a thing?
Yeah, good point. Call your legislator.
So do you believe that that's a good avenue for that?
I don't know how many dollars are in there right now. I mean, because every year or two we fund it, and based on what the resources are that we have. But it's worth checking into.
Well, again, we have the patent on it, so it's not like it's going to go anywhere, and it's only U.S. patent. So if they go overseas, I'm out. China's
got it. They're hearing you on this radio program.
Don't be that way. I was okay with being naive in my little world, but no, you went and did that.
Well, you're everywhere, so I'm just saying.
So that's kind of a win, and I know a lot of smart guys that do a lot of things, and they go by the wayside.
Yeah, I wonder how many entrepreneurs actually make it. What's the percentage that have an idea that actually produces wealth? I don't know. You probably know.
Well, I know a whole dozen ways not to work. I mean, just like Thomas Edison, I got 9,000 ways to not make a light bulb work. So I've lived those mistakes, and now you got a sure method. And it just, if you're listening out there, I mean, we're in Australia, we are in China, but if you're doing that kind of stuff, don't give up. I mean, you're listening to a guy who's making the shots. He's calling everything right. So Paul is like, he's the guy in Minnesota. We need that kind of support.
I want one of these batteries for free when you make it big.
Well, a Group 34 is like $980 for a Group 34. That's a average Ford. I want how much? But like any technology, it comes out of the chute at gold numbers, and then when they start to get caught up, I'm thinking I would want it to be for the Iron Range.
Well, I'm old enough that I've seen the advances of technology, and I just love it. I mean, I think back, to my dad, and I mean, he would have been when they first started flying airplanes all the way till now. And, I think about starting with these crazy phones that could dial, and then we had push button, and it was like, wow, that's amazing.
Magic.
And then suddenly you could have the phone that wasn't connected to the jack, and suddenly you had this giant car phone, and now it's these computers that are in our hand and can do everything, called a smartphone. I mean, it's just, I love that people are creative and think about how do we make people's lives better. And that's the entrepreneur.
Yeah. We'll work 80, not to work 40. We're 22 minutes into this. We're going to be like a 110 over, which is okay. Say something for your people.
I want to give people hope, and the hope for me is in two things. It's we're one nation under God, and I think to me that's like a prayer with liberty and justice for all. And so I have a lot of hope because I think God governs in the affairs of men, and He wants to bless us. But the second thing I hope in and trust is the people. And the people of America have a beautiful independent spirit, and they sense when it's not going the right direction, and they awaken. And I see people just rising up and getting engaged like they've never have before. And that gives me a lot of hope. We have a great, great nation. And we've got our flaws and we've got problems. But when we see them, we make course corrections. And I believe we're at one of those again. 1980 was like the last time, late 1970s, where totally mediocre and people said, just get used to it. Ronald Reagan came on the scene and said, no, we've been meant to be a great country. And that's where we're at right now, and we're going to get back there.
Wow. In the words of Pink Floyd, you rocked it. You unbelievable. But 24 minutes into the third segment, and we're going to pull the pin. Paul, thank you. Thank you very much for coming in the show. I hope that you can use this on your campaign. I would advise it. I mean, why not? I mean, you rocked it. They can hear you, heart and soul. please use it on your campaign.
You bet. This was a lot of fun, and we'll see you at the governor's residence.
I'm coming. You better have that in the mail because I'm coming with.
Thanks, Jim.
So, Hutcast is signing off. Paul Gazelka, State of Minnesota. We'll see you next time, and thanks everybody for listening. And that's a wrap for Hutcast. Hutcast is, again, a pragmatic approach to seeing things how some people see them. If you like our show, give us a thumbs up on the Facebook site. Again, for Hutcast, thank you again. Have a wonderful evening.